So I'm going to introduce my friend Mary Kay. She is very good with family history. She's very knowledgeable in it. She has a love for it, and she basically, she used to offer all of us people that she knows, friends and stuff, that she would bring in ice cream to your home just to teach you about family history. So, but a lot of what she loves is the fact that you can leave memories for other people to see, even in our lives, let alone what you can put that you might have in your possession for your families that have gone before you. So anyway, she's very bright and very smart. And so she's asked that we leave all questions till the very end. So if you have a question to ask her, we'll open that up at the end and you can unmute your mic and then basically ask her the question. Okay, we'll go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to her and get rid of me.
Okay, thank you very much, Robin. I appreciate that introduction. I just want to begin by telling people that this is not just something that strange people do or little old grannies. Family history and looking at genealogy is the second most popular hobby or activity in the United States. And number one being stamp and coin collecting. And that's on the decline, where family history interest is really soaring, especially in the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, since we've had increasingly wonderful access to records. And she mentioned about people in the past. The person in the top left corner, that's my grandfather. I never met him. He died before I was born. And so I am just grateful that they had that lovely portrait taken. And that's one of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do, is sit there and say, what can I do to build on my family's history in terms of creating a legacy or things that I would like my descendants or even siblings and peers to remember. Here we go. Whoops. Everyone, I think, needs to ask, why are you interested in your past and what do you hope to find or accomplish? Because some people may want to write books. Some people may want to just have a direct descendant line. Some people may want to know medical history. Examples: learn about your grandparents or other ancestors' lives. Find out how and when family came to the United States. Locate family members. Produce charts of family tree or family group sheets. Link family to major historical events, such as military service or civil service. Determine longevity of family members, like medical history. Collect family stories and personal histories, and develop a deeper sense of personal and family identity. So you don't have to have all these reasons you want to do it, but just to think about what is it you want to get out of looking at your ancestors. So I think the questions you need to ask is, what information should I be collecting? Where can I find it? And how do I organize, save, and share this information? And since many of you will have different reasons for getting involved, that you're going to have different answers on where you're going to be looking for information and who you may be sharing it with. But there are two major areas of informational sources. One is family records and one is publicly available information. So for example, in your family, in the attic or in scrapbooks or Aunt Jenny's house or whatever, you may have family genealogies, birth and death certificates, letters, photos, diplomas, family Bibles, personal histories, journals, interviews with family members that can even be recorded or taped or filmed, etc. Publicly available information, which is usually available either online or via subscription or from a public agency or government records, libraries, public agencies, like I said. This is information that you probably you're not going to find in the attic. These would be U.S. censuses or even international census, draft registrations, cemetery records, state archives, land records, ship manifests, extended family members, pedigree charts, where somebody may have posted a pedigree chart, but this is a relative that's a second or third cousin you may not even know. So in terms of family records, I think it's important to use our hunting and gathering skills. So within the family, so what to look for in terms of the hunting and the gathering. These are the types of records you can find within your home or the homes of your siblings or even your children or from other family members that may be cousins or aunts. Birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, personal histories, letters, diaries, journals, newspaper clippings, family Bibles, travel documents, funeral programs, military papers, cemetery records. Some of these you may have lost or misplaced, and you can get them through public sources, especially things like military records and cemetery records. But family photos and scrapbooks are ones where you really need to turn to family members. Yearbooks and diplomas, telegrams, family histories, oral histories, passports, and family keepsakes, believe it or not, like quilts and samplers, often have with them special meaning or special information attached. So let's get and look at some example, and also in terms of how are you going to organize it. You may be a shoebox person, or you might be someone who likes folders or notebooks or scrapbooks or digital files on the computer. Whatever works for you, you figure out where you want to put this birth certificate so you can find it in the future. As examples of family records and things where they yield more information than you might have even have thought. This is a birth certificate. It's someone born May 12th, 1950. So this person is this year 71 years old. Now, in addition to the person's name right up here, Frederick Paul Funk, we also have the father's name. Excuse me, that's the father's name. This is the mother's name. And notice this in the mother's name, that's the maiden name. This is the father's name. That's the child's name. I'm sorry. It was closer to that, but this is it right here. It's really wonderful to have the woman's maiden name because that's one of the pieces of information that often gets lost. So this birth certificate that's from St. Louis City has been wise enough to list not only the mother's name, but does not list her as Funk, lists her as Sylvester. It has the age. So let's say this is 1950. He was born in approximately 1925. That means Harry B. Funk will show up as a 5-year-old in the 1930 census, which is important because if we didn't have these ages, we wouldn't know where to look. And also that we know he was born in Minnesota. So that does narrow the search down. Let's look in the 1930 Minnesota U.S. Census and see if we can find this. Mother was born in Michigan. She's not going to be in the same census because she's 19. And so she's not going to show up until the 1940 census. So even though it says birth certificate and it's about one person, there's always more and more information because the family moved at some point, individual members from Michigan, Minnesota to St. Louis. The other thing I want to say is about the U.S. Census in general. The U.S. Census, based on our Constitution, is taken every 10 years. And what happens is all that information is confidential for 72 years. That's what I guess they considered the average lifespan. So we have the 1940 census. The next census we'll have next year made public will be the 1950 census. And some of you or some of your friends may show up in that census, and it may be the first time that you get to see yourself or your siblings in that census. This is another one. This is from Canada, a marriage license. And all of these, I mean, I'm not related to these people. I don't know them. I thought they were interesting examples of gleaning information readily available on the internet as a public document. This is interesting to me. This takes place in Canada in the province of Alberta, 1929. Where are the people from? They're not from Canada. They're not from Alberta. We've got Milan, Italy here for the bridegroom, and the bride is also from Italy. So whether they came here together to get married or they met once they were here, we don't know, but at least we know not to look for birth certificates for these individuals in Canada. They're going to be in Italy, and that helps. But another place to look, place of marriage, Catholic Church, right here in Alberta. So lots of times you get more information than you thought you would get if you read the small print on the government record. This is one that I thought was just amazing because it doesn't look like it's full of information. But if you look to the left, this is what's on this California death certificate 1994. The person's name, okay, his date of birth, his state of the birth, the date of death, the place of death, his race, marital status, both his occupation and his industry, his years of military service. He has a living daughter, and they provide not only her name, but her address, the place of his burial, his father's name, his mother's maiden name, the parent's states of birth, and his cause of death. So when something says death certificate, it's not just going to be a death certificate, it's going to have a lot of other information. So for example, that he was in the military from 1941 to 1973, that he was in, he was a command pilot in the Air Force. So you can see how he's coming alive as a human being just on black and white paper, more information than you may have known about a parent, a grandparent, or father-in-law, or whatever. And they always identify who provides the information. In this case, not only is the name given, but the relationship with her daughter, and then her address is given as well. But there's an awful lot of information on something that is just merely labeled a death certificate. Sometimes you get a personal history, or somebody writes out with a lot of prose something about someone's life, and you think, well, I don't have any dates or years or numbers or whatever. This isn't going to be very helpful. Well, if you take the time to read it, I'm going to show you how you can get a lot of information. James Collins Sr. was born, okay, so we know where he's born, in Sunderland, Durham, England, 1812. So that's one big clue, right? We're not going to be looking for him in the United States Census in 1820, 30, or 40, probably. The same year as Dickens, Tennyson, and other noted Englishmen. So somebody's adding a little color and flavor. He was the son of John Collins and Elizabeth, see that magic word here? Robinson, the maiden name. So who's ever done this has been very thoughtful to get the complete names of both parents. And then it tells a little story here is about that they were shipbuilders, and his father was shipwrecked with 2 other sailors and lived on an island for 5 years. His older brother was lost at sea, which grieved his mother very much. She resolved that her younger son should not go to sea when he grew to manhood. So it's not just, a dry narrative of dates and locations and names. There's a little story there. And I think if I was that mother, I wouldn't want that son to go to sea too, as well, especially after losing her husband for 5 years, shipwrecked on an island. Oh, whoops. He was apprenticed to a friend of his father in the shipyard so he could build ships. He just couldn't get on them. And as he grew in years, his ability as a ship carpenter also grew. At the age of 21, he was considered a master carpenter, assisted in the building of ships for Queen Victoria's Navy. Okay, so we know at least till the age of 21 that he is in Great Britain. One of the things to know about the British Census, it's made available on the years that end in 1. So there would be a census that he would show up in the 1821, 31, 41, etc. And that's helpful because it's an off year of the U.S. Census, and their record keeping has historically been really good. While working in the shipyards, he met and later married. Okay, here's the name of his wife. Notice there's the maiden name, daughter of, and then the father and the mother and her maiden name, Stevenson. To this union were born 8 children, 7 of whom were born in England. 3 sons died in infancy. Now that may not seem like a lot of information, but it really is because 1 child wasn't born in England. I don't think they went to Italy. I think they came to the United States. That's where you should look for that last son. If 3 of them have died, they may not have a lot of records, but you'll know that the total number that they had was 8. So even though this is just 3 paragraphs, there's a lot of information here. Okay, another thing that you can do for terms of family records is to collect photos. And this is one of my favorites. It's a friend's mother and aunts and grandparents. I love the hairstyles. You can just get the year just by looking at the hair. It was 1928, and they had been born all but the son and the daughter in the one daughter rather in Armenia, and they spent 5 years going across Europe before they came to the United States. and they quickly adopted all the style and fashion of the era. Another thing you can do is show multiple generations. This is a fourth generation taken in 1969 at another family member's wedding. When people tend to congregate, pull out your camera and have people sit together or photograph them in 4 generations, 3 generations. All right, don't just use old pictures. You may recognize this person right here. This is her family. This is the 2021 photo. And she, her family lives diverse places. When they come together, it's a time to take photos. You can't go back 10 years from now and capture this image. So take advantage of it and do when you can. Do it when you can. Okay, what else can you do in terms of collecting records? Family Bibles and family trees. Be careful though that you remember sometimes the person who did this stopped writing when they ran out of lines. Well, there were more children. They just didn't get written down. But, don't have form dictate function. Function should dictate form. But if this is all you have, be happy that you have it. Another thing is funeral programs. This is actually one of the sons of the shipbuilder, and shows that where he was born. So we know that he was one of the sons who was born in England, and that they were there until at least 1845. So it's like being a detective, and you think, okay, I have clue here, clue here, clue here. How do I put them together to weave a story? Grave markers, and some of our graves are getting very old, but note the wife's maiden name and the birth and death dates. So that's really good to be able to find that on a marker. And especially there's that maiden name again that we can be so happy to find, because when you can't find it, it's very frustrating. Letters. This is someone where there was a division in the family. The husband ran off with another woman, and the next generation down was trying to repair the relationships. And so it says, with love to all, Aunt Jenny Stewart. She's trying to make sure that there are not hurt feelings or bad sentiments between the two branches of the family. My mother got this. This was in, I don't even know, 1940 something or other. And she had a nephew born. It's a 6-pound boy, 8:20 p.m., both fine, love Lou. And Lou was her brother-in-law. So we don't do telegrams much anymore. But if you find them, keep them, preserve them, digitize them, do what you can, because it's part of our history. And finally, keepsakes, family keepsakes, quilts or samplers. This happens to be a school book that was, and it says this school book was used by Charles C. Rich when he was 15 years old. It was made by his mother, Nancy O'Neill. Again, the maiden name is there, which is really nice that you have this record of his school year. And he was born about, I think, 1805. So this is old. Okay, publicly available information. Let's say your family wasn't great record keepers. What can you do to capture some of the information that perhaps wasn't recorded or in the past has been destroyed or whatever? So these things are often available online via subscriptions or books or libraries or public agencies, etc. And everything that I'm sharing with you, it's stuff that I could find sitting in my living room just using online services. I didn't have to go to the libraries. I didn't have to write for records, etc. Some of these are things that we don't talk about much anymore, like ship manifests. The census is, I think, one of the most valuable tools for everyone who has at least 1 or 2 generations in the United States. Lots of birth records, marriage records, draft registration, Social Security death records, state death records, voter registration, family trees that have been prepared by someone else, state census records. Not every state did a state census, but some of them did them, and they did it in years that ended in 5. So in addition to the census being every 10 years, the state census was 2, but it ended in years with 5 instead of 0. Cemetery records, it sounds like it's a joke, something called Find a Grave. And Saturday Night Live would be making great humor out of it. It's actually a wonderful site, and I'll show you something from it coming up. But it's very, very serious and basically run by volunteers, people photographing cemeteries all over the United States. and other parts of the world, and then adding information onto this website. Newspaper obituaries, photographs, yearbooks, newspaper articles, land records, formally published family histories and genealogies, and local histories. Sometimes relatives show up in city, county, and state histories. Okay, there are helpful websites. Excuse me. Some are free. Some give you 2 weeks to 1 month trial membership, and others, they expect you to subscribe. So the ones I use the most, Family Search, which is free, and Ancestry, which I have subscribed to, and then Find a Grave, which is also free. But these are other ones in here that you might check out. I think Ancestry is the most popular. All of them also do DNA testing, so people can find out, what their background is, or even find lost relatives. 2 days ago, I had somebody tell me that her husband, who was adopted, found both his mother and his father, his birth parents, and a bunch of step siblings, just out of the blue because he had done that DNA test and he wasn't even looking for them. Okay, Family Search, and this is what I want. There's a toll-free number. It's a free subscription, and you can put your family tree on this. And then what they do, in addition, right here in the sign-in is a free account. And if you have any questions, you hit Get Help, and you have the choice of either emailing them, talking live, having them phone you, or watching one of their help videos. So anyway, they're very, very popular. Doesn't cost you anything. And what you put up there, you can see what other people put up as well. And you can add to and contribute to what they're putting online. Maybe find a sibling that you didn't know about, and vice versa. You can help them as well. There are family history centers here in Phoenix, and all you have to do is look for Family History Center, Google it, and it's one-on-one personal consulting. It's help with family search. It's information on seminars and workshops, and you have access to all of these sites at no charge to you, because this is if you physically show up at a family history center. And it's not like there won't be one near you. They're all over. And so I'm speaking to you from Glendale. I'm sure there are people who are in Phoenix and Scottsdale and other areas. There are lots of family history centers providing free access and consulting on family history. Okay, I'm going to turn the page. Okay, let's look at some publicly available information. And I randomly picked a famous person that we would all know, so we could see some of the records, just a few of the records that are publicly available to document this person's life. And the person I picked was Charlie Chaplin, because he moved from one country to another country. He married outside in a third country. And I just thought it would be interesting. Here he is at 22. Now, if you notice up here, this is the 1911 census in Britain. The 1901 census is shown, and then the 1891, because he's 22, so he would have been a 1-year-old in those censuses. But I didn't think we want to do every census in his life. What's interesting, he's living at home with his mother. He's 22, and he's laboring in the coal trade. Well, you and I both know that he didn't spend a long time laboring in the coal trade, because he became a very well-known actor and producer and director. So the next one I want to share, this is England census, and every census has slightly different questions. Some of them say, what year were you born? And someone say what age are you today, but you won't know what year they were born. It's just part of it's the reading of it. The next census I pulled was the United States Census in 1940. He's clearly come up in the world. He's living in Beverly Hills. He has a wife, and he's got a maid, a cook, and a chauffeur. And when it came to his income, he made more than $5,000 a year. You can see a little plus sign there. So in the space of, not that many years, he became a very, very famous man, very popular, very loved, and was in the United States. But you can see the changes in his life if you look at every 10 years and see where he's living and his marital status and children, etc. Okay, his last marriage was in 1943. Not every record is accurate, right? He was never a judge. I don't know why somebody would type that in the newspaper. Maybe it was a nickname. Maybe he was given an honorary something rather. but he's Charlie Chaplin, the actor. You can see actor, producer. We see his marriage date is in 1943, Santa Barbara, and he actually married Eugene O'Neill, our famous American playwright's daughter, and she was 18. It was quite the scandal. So I mentioned before about Find a Grave. This is from Find a Grave. This is what they have for Charlie Chaplin. They'll tell you where he was buried. He's buried in Switzerland, where his death took place, his exact precise place of birth in Greater London. Then there's a biography about him. You can read more, and it will list his parents, their full names, and all of his spouses. He had 4 spouses. So, and then he lists some of his children and other photographs. I would encourage people, the only thing about Find a Grave is that you have to be exactly accurate in terms of how do you spell the person's name. You can't stick in an initial that they may not recognize. It's much more precise than some of the other sites, but when you get it, it's so helpful. They have some really interesting things. Okay, that's Charlie Chaplin. I could have randomly picked, I started with Oscar Hammerstein. I tried some different people. I just wanted to make sure there were people who were deceased so we could have enough time to see their records online and know about their lives. Okay, so these are some other examples. The World War II draft registration. Okay, so you think, oh, that's about, name and age or date or whatever. Well, it also has some other information. It says name and address of the person who will always know your address. And this is the person, Josephine Seitz. Okay, his last name is Seitz, 239 Main Street, Tottenville. And this is in Rich County in New York. Well, there's one piece of information here that tells me I think this is his wife and not his mother. And the reason, if he was 22 or 19, I'd say that's his mom. He's 45. And so I think that's his wife, okay? So they're married, and this is World War II. They're going to show up as a couple in the 1950 census. I don't know how long they may have been married. They may be in the 1940 census. And the couple would show up as Max and Josephine Seitz. And then you might be able to get her maiden name. But just because it says draft registration, don't assume it's not useful. Other thing, look over here. Where was he born? Should we be looking for him in the U.S. for U.S. birth records? No, he's born in Austria. And all of these things just require sharp eyes and looking for details. But the records are out there if we just take the time to look at them. Okay, another example. This is World War I draft registration. Granted, it's not easy to read, okay? So anyway, he was born in 1899. He's 19, right? So now you look at nearest relative. It is, in this situation, it's Mrs. Thomas M. Hayes. I don't think he's married. I think that's his mother. I think that's his father's name. If you were to look in the 1900 census, he would be 1. And you would get Thomas M. Hayes' wife's first name, and you would be able to have a more complete record, because it seems like he's been in this Rutland, Vermont, quite a while. It's a farming community, and you could expect that that there might be strong roots there. So I would expect to see him in the 1910 and the 1900 census, and be able to find more information. One thing about the census, we don't have an 1890 census. It was destroyed by fire and flooding. So we go from 1880 to 1900 before we have a good census. And that's a huge span of 20 years. So I'm grateful that he would have gotten in his first census as a 1-year-old. Somebody was looking for him. And notice it's Harold John Hayes. The more complete the name, the more likely we are to find him in the census or any other public record. Okay, here's an even older one. This is the 1850 census. And the 1840, 1850, but mostly the 1850, is the first census that really is complete. They used to number of free men, number of free women, number of indentured servants, men, male, indentured servant, female, minor children, and they didn't even write names down. Then they started writing names, but they'd use initials. So by the time and that was the 1920, 30, and 40 censuses, by the time they hit the 1850, Pow, dynamite. They're wonderful. But I thought this was really interesting. Why is this interesting and or important? This fact, Phoebe Graves. She has a different last name. And so the detective in me says, that's a husband and wife here. There are 3 children. And I bet she's grandma. And I'll bet, because she doesn't have the last name. And I'll bet Mary Bratton's maiden name is Graves. And I did some more searching, and sure enough, that was the case. Okay. And the next one, ship manifest. We don't talk about that much today because people don't travel on ships all that much. But this is a journey to England. This is my grandfather at age 26. They listed his occupation as a farmer, and country of the US, the state of Utah, and he went to Great Britain for 2 years. And this was the ship manifest that, thank goodness for the record keeping we have, it's available online. And yes, you have to work to read it, but sometimes people travel in pairs. It could be a couple that are married, a brother and sister, a whole family. Ship manifests provide a lot of information. Okay, here's someone you'll recognize. United Kingdom, 2013. So you're going around here, the 8th day, the name of and surname, Baroness Margaret Hilda Thatcher, sex female. Okay, occupation, stateswoman, retired. She was the prime minister. I don't have any special access. You wouldn't need any special access. These are available online. I was just looking like, who would have an interesting death certificate? And when you look down here, and there are places for 1, 2, 3, and sometimes 4 listings of death. She's got 4 listings here, the last one being dementia. But we've got cancer of the stomach, we've got cardiovascular accident. I mean, there are 4 things that are given and signed by her doctor. Okay, so let's say you have all these dates, these locations, you've got names, you've got maiden names, and you're thrilled about that. What do you do with them? Well, you might just put them in family folders, but one thing that you can do is you can build a pedigree chart. Now, this is a pedigree chart that looks like a tree, just sideways. In other words, this is the bark right here, what's the main thing, the tree called? The trunk. And then it goes out. And see, every child has 2 parents, and but we're not listing all the siblings here. We're just taking Elizabeth's line out here and Parley's line out here. And that's why it's called a tree. Another way to produce the same thing, this is Parley. Here he is down here. And this is called a pedigree chart as well, but it's a fan chart. So we don't have siblings listed. We don't have a lot of geography and things of that nature, marriage dates. It's just showing the breadth of the family tree. So we start with Parley. These are his parents, his grandparents, his great-grandparents, and all of his great-great-grandparents, going back to, 1734 is one of the earliest ones. So not one way is better than the other, and more information is available on each person in the next type of record keeping, which is a family group sheet. Now, this is really an elaborate one. Most of them don't have pictures. This person wanted to go all out and include photos, and it's really nice because you feel kind of a connection with the family member and the person they married, spouse, and all the information here. So this is the mother and the father. These are the children. Whoops, made a mistake. And these are their spouses. What I want you to notice right here is the children who did not live to maturity. So we've got first child, second child, third child, fifth child, seventh child. Well, the 4th and the 6th children died before they were adults. And there's an opportunity to always include that information on a family group sheet, whereas they may not show up in a photograph, or there may not be a marriage record or draft record or something of that nature. This is what you can put in and include as much as possible. Notice up here, we have the husband, we have the wife, we have birthplace. If they're christening, you can put that in as well. This is Switzerland. Then they were married in Switzerland, born in Switzerland, and then they have the father's name and the mother's name, father's name and the mother's name. And it said list complete maiden name for all females. I've stressed that before, but it really needs to be repeated because people don't do it. And that's why it's printed on this form so that people would remember to absolutely do it. Okay. You can promote family history within your family. And I'm going to give you some examples because right now we've been talking about hunting and gathering, family records, and public records, but you can help create records and encourage people in your family to do that, like preserve existing records digitally. And they've made it now so that even your printer out of the, will scan things for you and create files. Your smartphones do it. It's not like we have to go out and buy film and get it processed, and there's only one original. It's just a whole different world, and we don't have to worry about negatives and they're going to get damaged. I mean, it just has changed everything. Share information with immediate and extended family members. Take what you want from this presentation, go work on something, and then let people know via email or person or family reunions what you want to share and get them excited. Collect and share family stories. My mother used to tell a story about when she was in high school, she used to have to shovel, she always used the word shovel jelly beans in a factory that was extremely hot. And so we would always tease her about, well, Mom, are you going to be shoveling jelly beans? Because, we think of jelly beans and you have a little scoop, but my mother insists it was a shovel. She also talked about having to drive the cows from one pasture to another and how very terrifying it was because she was so concerned they were going to eat the wrong grass and get bloated. So I do know that a bloated cow is just big trouble, even though I spend very little amount of time around cows. But it's one of those family stories that you always hear or that she makes reference to. Keep a journal. Encourage other family members to do the same thing. Write your personal history, and whether it's 2 pages or 200, it'll be wonderful for others to read and for others to learn from your life experience. Write and collect family histories. Lots of families have books on their family name and different regional parts of the United States where they lived. And you can search those online and you can just Google your family name, like if it's Robertson Family History, and you can Google it and see what comes up. It's a really amazing, even putting in the name of your great-grandfather or grandfather, what comes up just Googling it. Conduct oral histories. Sometimes these are recorded, sometimes these are just taken by notes, but you want to get these stories down and ask them fun questions. What was your favorite toy when you were 10? What did you do in summer vacation? What candy did you eat? What was the typical Sunday meal like for you? So that they're not just stuffy dates and names and place. This is what I call discover the dash. We often have somebody who was born between 1910 and they died. They were born in 1910 and they died in, let's say, 1988 or something. We'll discover the dash. What happened between the birth and the death? That's an interesting story. That's just insightful. Either what they learned. I mean, I remember asking my mother a lot about the Depression, that she lived in the Depression, and it changes your life if you live through something like that. What was it like to have a husband go away and be gone for World War II? And in my family, it's really unusual. My mother's old enough to be my grandmother, and my grandmother's old enough to be my great-great-grandmother. So that was a big, huge, expansive U.S. history in there. And I said, what did you think about Amelia Earhart when you heard she was missing? So you can delve into all sorts of things that are interesting subjects, not only just for your family member, but also in the history of the country. Okay, make and preserve family keepsakes, quilts, samplers, all sorts of things. I love going to people's homes and seeing something on the wall that belonged to their great-grandparents. Or I have a friend who has the shoes that her great-grandmother wore, these leather shoes, and they look teeny to me. But she said, when I was a little kid, I could wear them, but I can't now. She also has a quilt that's a crazy quilt, so that instead of a specific pattern, there are all sorts of different shapes, and they're put together in stitches, each one of which is different. But that's a great keepsake. And record your family in photos and videos. And most of us don't have any excuse because we walk around with a camera and a video in our pocket. So it's good to know that. I appreciate that my family did that because I have this picture of my mother and aunts and uncles that I think is darling. I'm a little prejudiced. And they have unusual names. This is Colson, Weldon, Francis, Iris, and Leah. So, and I love the bows. And they were smart. This is about 1919. They did this in 1934. They did it in 1945. They did this in 1956 at my grandmother's 80th birthday party. And they did this in the 1990s. 5 of them were still living. And this is probably the last picture of all of them living at this time. Not the greatest in focus picture, but I have it and I'm happy. Okay, so I hope that motivates you to get your camera out and do a few things. And don't procrastinate. This is my friend. This is Barney and this is Francis. And they're a wonderful couple. He's been a judge, a lawyer, just a number of fascinating things. And I asked him, I said, Barney, have you ever been photographed in your robes? And he said, never. And I said, well, I want to take your picture in the robes. So I took this picture and you notice he's got the same tie on. And I took pictures with his wife, Frances. And it was funny because when I asked them which pictures they liked, she liked all the ones when she was on the right, and he didn't like the ones when he was on the left. And then he liked the ones when he was on the right and she was on the left. So I think the lighting must have affected their views. Anyway, wonderful couple. And I took these pictures in 2017 and I initiated, I'm not related to these people, but I just had a sense they need some pictures. Well, don't procrastinate, because by 2018, the next year, I couldn't photograph Barney. He had passed away. And this is also from Find a Grave, which is he's buried in the National Memorial Cemetery of Arizona. He died at age 87 in Phoenix, and his birthday was 7 June 1930. So you don't want to put off what you can do today, even if you don't know how you're going to use it or who would be interested or think that it would even matter. And when I go back and show you this picture, when I visit Frances, she said to me, you know, most people have pictures of their spouse when they were young. I remember him looking just like this. He said, I have one of these pictures, because I did different poses, in every room. And so she, you know, I thought, well, she likes looking at Barney, and that's great. But I'm just glad I took the pictures. And I think all of us need to sit there and figure out, what do I need to do today that I won't be able to do in 5 years or 10 years? Okay, okay. Do not become overwhelmed. One nut at a time. The squirrel did not collect all these nuts in one day, okay? Squirrels are amazing. They're industrious. They plan ahead. They know to be prepared. I don't know another animal really that does this, but it's amazing. But they don't engage in something that is going to be overwhelming so that they don't do anything. One nut at a time. If you say, I'm only going to collect photographs, or I'm only going to go through, you know, my maternal line because I think the best records are there. And then when I get confidence, know how to organize them, then I'll work on the paternal line. Like I said, if a shoebox works for you, great. If notebooks, some people like to collect and then sort, and other people like to be organized as they go. Do a system that works for you. Do a system where you feel I can be successful. And you know, if you only want to work on your parents, or only want to work on your children or siblings or whatever, that's fine. You don't have to do everything. It just might be fun and interesting and productive for you to do something. You know, get 2 little acorns. Don't worry about this huge pile. There's something else that they found out about people who do family history. And this is research that was done at Emory University, and it was published in the New York Times. And they tested people to figure out resilience. How do people deal with difficult situations? How do they deal with strife or turmoil? And why do some people do it better than others? Why do some people feel that they have that reservoir of strength to draw on versus a situation gets overly dramatic and they more or less collapse or just feel overwhelmed? And what they found out is a very specific benefit of knowing and sharing your family history. This is what they found out. The more children knew about their family's history, the stronger their sense of control over their lives, the higher their self-esteem, and the more successful they believe their families function. Let me give you some examples. Children who sat around the dinner table and were told stories about, well, you know, when I asked your mother out, she turned me down. She turned me down 3 times for a first date. But, you know, finally worked out and we're married and we're happy. Then children know, don't expect things to go right the first time or the second. It may take 3 times. But in our family, we keep persevering and we succeed. So they're not always happy stories or easy stories. Sometimes they're struggling stories. But the thing that was interesting about the research is that they tested and asked people, you know, did you know about how your grandparents met or where your mother went to school? There were never things they could observe. There were things that they had to be told. So being told those stories help people feel, whether it's a good time or a bad time, my family gets through it and I can get through it. And that's what made them more resilient and make them feel like they could be successful in whatever they face. And there were significant differences, and this study has been published at a number of publications and journals. And I think it's more or less validates our need to know about our families, where we came from, because it connects us with the human family, but it also gives us a really specific slice that's smaller and more manageable for us. And we can sit there and say, I figured out, I think I'm like my grandmother about this, and she died when I was 5, but I have scrapbooks she did with, and she had beautiful handwriting. And, you know, I've made scrapbooks and I try to have nice handwriting, and sometimes I do. I've addressed more wedding invitations for friends than I could possibly name. But then other things I see, well, I like my father because of this. He didn't like to stand in lines. I hate standing in lines. That's the worst part of Disneyland. But other things, you know, I'm not like him. But you don't know this until you take the time to study, to know who they are, to you know, between the dash, discover the dash between their birth and their death. What can you find out about these people? And I just want to tell you, the last 5, 10, 15 years are like none others. It used to be that you had to save up, spend your vacation, buy airfare tickets, rent a car, and go traipsing through cemeteries to get this information. Now you sit on your computer, turn on NCIS reruns, and you can sit there with the flick of the mouse button and have it literally just pop up. And you can say, I mean, first of all, the time it saves, the expense it saves, the amount of success you feel. This is the perfect era to be interested in families and to want to search out these things. And it's the time for you to think also, what type of records do I want to leave for my children and grandchildren or siblings or friends or whatever, and plan for that now. Okay, so Robin's going to talk. Oh, or do you have any questions? Does anybody have any question? I can't see you to call on you, but I think Robin's going to be able to see. Any questions?
Can I see the chart again, the circle one?
Which chart did you want to see?
The circle chart?
The purple.
Thinking the fan chart.
Oh, the fan chart?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. That one?
Yep. Thank you. Hold on.
Okay, this is generated by a computer on Family Search. So if you wanted this, and you can move the person in the center, make it you, I could make it be James Bratton, and it would show subsequent generations. And you can decide how many generations do I want to show. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've seen them, there were 7 and 8 generations. This type gets pretty small, and it generates within like 2 seconds, and then you can print them out, and you can also go to Family History Center and get help with it, but it's just available with Family Search. It's one of the options. So you get your option of this type of chart or this type of chart. Obviously, this has more information, but you don't see as many people, and you don't have to add pictures. This happens to have a lot of pictures, but you don't have to. This one doesn't have it at all.
So I happen to have a lot of information actually now on both sides of my family, but I don't have a chart big enough. I don't know what to do with it.
Okay, I would encourage you. This is my grandfather. So they had if I, well, this isn't live, so I can't do it. So he's got children, those children have spouses, those couples have children. When you put it on the computer, then you slide from generation to generation. You don't have to worry about printing it out because you just go to Family Search and it's always there. Now you can print it out, and then when you print it out, many times it's helpful to do it this way by family units, like a husband and wife and all their kids, and do that for each of these couples as well. So Eugene Weber would have his wife and all their children listed, and you'd have one for each of these. So this is the family group sheet. So you're showing the family, whereas a pedigree chart, you're shooting straight back for as many generations as either you have or you want. But the thing about printing it out is you do run out of paper on the pedigree chart, but on the screen, you can just slide the screen and be able to see it all.
So on Family Search, I can share it as well with other people?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? Does anybody have any idea on where they think they might start? Collecting pictures, looking for marriage certificate, anything. The one thing you can do about Ancestry, you can go on and see other people who are working on your family line as well. And this may be a second or third cousin that you didn't even know about, and this person's done a great deal of work. And the same thing can happen in Family Search as well. Sometimes it has to be out, 1 or 2 generations, like grandparents or great-grandparents. But, this continent is only so big, and people move and marry and have children, and somebody's, great aunt is somebody else's sister, is somebody else's spouse, is somebody else's daughter-in-law, the same person. So this person's likely to show up in a lot of different records or a lot of different family histories. Are there any more questions? Okay, thanks, Mary Kay. We'll go ahead and end our seminar. Yeah, you can always go back on and review the video. Say, what was the name of that website? Oh, it was Ancestry. What was the name? Find a Grave. Oh, what was it? Family Search. And then you put it in Google and it'll pop up. They're very popular sites used widely across the country. Yeah, Bill's hoping to move this video onto our website. So if you want to go back and refresh yourself on anything, feel free to look at it there. Thank you for attending, coming. Good luck. Have fun. Enjoy it. Enjoy it.
Appreciate all your time. Thank you so much.
Thank
Mary Kay.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.